Hello guys, I'm Bao and my partner is Leslie, and today we are going to present to you guys about TMDL. Here's our outline. So in this presentation, we'll be covering what are TLDM, why is it important, the history of it, and development process of it. TMDL. It stands for total maximum daily loads. It is the maximum amount of a balloon that allowed to enter water sources so that the water sources still maintain standard qualities. So each pollutant causing a water body to be impaired or threatened is referred to as a water body pollutant combination. And typically a TMDL is developed for each pollutant. So for example, if one water body is impaired, are threatened by free pollutants, free TMDL might be developed for the water body. So why is it important to have TMDL? We have TMDL to protect agriculture. You know, agriculture depends on water. And then if our water is not set up to health standards, it will affects the crops and the production. TMDLs also help to monitor and address the quality of the water body. And this also help to identify sources and amounts of pollutant. And it acts like a link between water quality standards and control actions to obtain these standards. Here's an example. This is a Lake Tahoe TMDL goal. As we can see, like around 1970s, we can see up to 30 meters in depth in Lake Tahoe. And then right now, we can only see up to around like 22 meters. It's been proven that the water quality has been dulled by a lot, probably because there's a lot of bacteria or trash down the bottom that helps reduce the clarity. So the TMDL goal for the Lake Tahoe is to return to the initial state of clarity, right, at 29.7 meters in 2070. So by having a TMDL, it's also not it's not only help to clarify the lake, but also add a standard, a goal that we can agree to go up to. This is my site. Here's my question. So what agency have the right to approve TMDL? The correct answer is C, the EPA.
Hi, my name is Leslie. I'm going to begin with the history of TMDLs. So to start, there are two main strategies that the Federal Clean Water Act has for managing water quality. One is the technology-based approach that of course uses the best technology available to then be able to envision requirements to maintain a minimum level of pollutant management. The second strategy is a water quality-based approach that consists of surface water evaluations and limitation settings on the amount of pollution that the water can even be exposed to. Thankfully, EPA support for TMDLs began back in 1991 by developing and reviewing the TMDLs. And so basically what happens is a list gets created by the state, which contains waters that are not meeting the standards after the technological limits are put into place. So then that is where TMDLs come in. And so the states are to develop TMDLs for the waters on the list, the 303D list to be exact. And as you can imagine, a TMDL must account for sources that cause the water to be on the list in the first place. And what's interesting is that the requirements to develop TMDLs have been in the Clean Water Act since 1972. Since the most significant pollution was point source pollution in rivers and streams, a lot of federal money went to implementation of point source controls. The Porter Colony Act authorities were used by the state and regional boards in California for implementation on non-point source pollution problems, which are of smaller scale. Oh, and by the way, non-point source pollution, which can also be referred to as polluted runoff, is basically the release of pollutants from everything literally other than point sources. Like some examples of non-point sources are stormwater and agriculture runoff, and even dust and air pollution that makes its way into the water. What's also interesting is that at one point back in the 1980s, point source pollution was better controlled, but the unhealthy water quality began rising again due to the growing non-point source pollution. So then environmental groups decided to file lawsuits, not just a few. Literally to this date, over 40 lawsuits were filed, especially against EPA due to their responsibility to approve the TMDLs. Since all the attention was basically only on point source pollution, not non-point source pollution. So now to the development of TMDLs. So TMDLs in California are developed either by RWQCBs, which stands for the California State Water Resources Control Board, or can be developed by US EPA, which stands for the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And basically those two differ since TMDLs developed by RWQCB are designed more as basin plan amendments and also include implementation provisions, while TMDLs developed by EPA don't have comprehensive implementation provisions. Anyway, all TMDLs have to have allocations to point sources and also non-point sources of pollutants. Okay, so there is steps in developing TMDLs. So listed on this slide are the 5 most common ones. Number 1, involve stakeholders. And what that means is anyone who's concerned with the water in question can provide input and basically be involved in the beginning of this whole process. So for example, like businesses, government entities, and literally even the general public can be involved. Number 2, assess the water body, meaning identifying the pollution sources and the loads. Number 3, define the total load and develop allocations. So since there can be multiple TMDLs on one water body, it needs to be determined in this step if they're going to be needed. It can also be that one TMDL can address more than one pollutant at a time, which is awesome. And basically all the allocations need to result the water body to attain water quality standards. Number 4, develop implementation plan. It's a step that ensures that allocations are met and also the parties that will carry out the actions are identified. Number 5, amend the basin plan. So it's a federal law to incorporate TMDLs into the basin plans. And a basin plan is basically a document, a legal document that describes water quality management like a regional board would manage. And so here, this image is showing a field staff member collecting water quality data, which is showcasing one of the steps that is necessary to characterize pollution sources, of course. So EPA has guidelines that need to be followed. So there's certain elements that need to be in a TMDL document. Like some examples are the pollutant, of course, the pollutant source, loading capacity, margin of safety, monitoring plan to track TMDL effectiveness, etc. There's a way longer list. And as we know, the TMDLs are submitted to EPA for the approval, and if by any chance the EPA doesn't approve it, EPA is required to develop a replacement TMDL. That's important to know. And here is my question for you guys. What are the most common steps in developing a TMDL in order from first to last? So you can press pause here and choose the best out of the 5 options. So the answer is C. Oh, yeah, and before we go, I just wanted to show you guys a quick glimpse of how a completed TMDL looks like. That's what we should all be aiming for many reasons, as we've been learning in class, but especially for our aquatic wildlife. Here are the reference that I used.